So this, as they say in Madison Square Garden, is the big event. This is when we're going to talk about the future of the world. As far as I have understood, AI will be replacing us all very shortly. And next year in Peru, we're not expecting any audience at all. In fact, you can be sending, Tony, you're going to see a lot of agentic AI appearing. I'll be sending my avatar. Tony, you will not actually exist either. So just to be clear, next year will be completely AI. But today we're going to talk about AI. So we've got three bona fide experts in the field. I'm going to start with you, Barry, if I could invite you up. Barry O'Sullivan is from the university here. He is a tremendously deep expert in AI, maybe not so much in food, I would suggest, but if you'd sit in that one there, yeah. So he's worked with the Irish government in every aspect of how AI can be used through industry, defence. He's been an advisor to the European Union. He's been involved with raising money for different 300 million euros so far, I believe, according to...
Maybe a bit more.
Maybe a bit more. I love that number. Maybe a bit more. 300 million, a billion, who knows? Somewhere between those two. So he's here to really give us some of the insights into his thoughts on where AI is going. Julia Sommerdien is coming to us from Boston. She's a graduate of Northeastern with an MBA, did 2 degrees at MIT, has formed her own startup in the ag tech field called Labby, originally from China, now is really another one of those ag tech startups, as we saw in the previous panel, that's out there looking for money, looking for funding, but also, in my experience, with a really deep understanding of how AI can change the whole area of health, animal nutrition. If you follow her on LinkedIn, you'll see her publications on this. They're really interesting, her perspective. Ian Lahiff, what could I say about you, Ian? Very little, very much. So Ian lives in Beijing, so we seem to have a little bit of a strange thing going here, where the man who looks Irish is actually in Beijing and vice versa. Ian is a Gaeilgeoir, speaks fluent Chinese, is married and has 2 Chinese children in Beijing. He has worked previously with the Department of Agriculture in Ireland, Keenan's, which was an equipment company, Alltech. He's worked with Celtic Sea Minerals, and today is at that, I'll call it that cutting edge of ag tech startups, the use of artificial intelligence, working throughout Asia. We're very lucky you came home. He's originally from Galway, but thank you very much for coming home for this conference, Ian. So I'm really looking forward to a no-holds-barred discussion on AI. I don't know if that's possible. If you want to be polite, that's okay, but you probably guessed by now that's not my style. Bullet train moment for, well, maybe I should start with a question to the audience. So who here is excited by AI? No, excited by AI. Could I see proper hands? Because you're very timid. Okay, so it doesn't look like too many. Okay, who's scared by AI? Oh, this is an Irish vote. You've all voted twice. I won't even go through the other options. I had the opportunity, I was getting on a plane in Wilmington, North Carolina about 3 months ago. And a gentleman ahead of me had a sheriff with him. And I saw the sheriff, and the person beside me, who was also a frequent flyer, said, "Who do you think he is?" I said, "He must be a politician." And the guy beside me, an American, said, No, he's a felon. He must be going to prison. I said, no. I said, sometimes the two things do come together. I mean, sometimes you're a politician and you go to prison, or a prisoner going to become a politician. But so I got on the plane. Turned out I was sitting beside this gentleman. He was wearing a baseball hat. And I honestly looked at him and I couldn't figure out who he was. So I said, "Are you a politician?" He said, "Former." Now it's 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm trying to get I'm trying to get him started. But I'm getting nothing from this guy. And he said, "Former politician." Okay. Wait a minute. And I said, "Well, former what? Former congressman, senator?" "Oh, I was a former congressman." And no more silence. He said, "Well, I was also governor of Indiana." Now, governor of Indiana is actually quite a big job. I don't know the governors of Indiana, but that's probably more important than being a congressman. And he said, and I was also vice president. I said, cool, vice president, like of what? Of the local bank or, what were you, feed company? What were you? I was vice president of the United States. So I looked and thought, you were vice president of the United States? So he took off his hat and said, I'm Mike Pence, nice to meet you. So I asked him, I was doing a presentation on AI, and I said, are you excited by AI or scared by AI? And he said, yes, both. So he voted like you did. And I said, why are you excited? He said, because we're in a race. America's in a race to dominate AI. And why are you scared by AI? And he said, any technology that can tell you how to commit suicide and correct the suicide note for its grammar, I have a problem with. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's not a whole lot you can say when somebody says that to you. That's a very deep comment. Right, my panel, please. Barry, are we excited by AI or are we scared by AI?
Well, I think we're excited. Well, I'm excited about AI, but I think I'm also very cautious about the messages that are being sent to us by the industry that has now become the generative AI industry. I think most people in this room are using AI every day and they don't even realize it. But unfortunately, I think a lot of the narrative that you hear about now is from the generative AI community, and I would encourage you to take that with a planetoid grain of salt, frankly. You cannot trust an industry that is run exclusively by wealthy American young men, frankly. And that is what this industry is run by. The stories, they're not consistent in their messages to you. They tell you, well, your jobs are going to be replaced, despite the fact there's no evidence of that whatsoever. They'll tell you that your jobs are not going to be replaced, you're going to be assisted. You'll be told that humanity will be wiped out if AI poses an existential threat to humanity. And then the next breath, they'll tell you that AI is going to cure cancer. So the amount of hype in that industry is phenomenal. And I would encourage you just simply not to believe it. I think you need to suspend your belief in what they're saying until at least one of them attempts to IPO. And then maybe the truth will come out. But I think I'm excited for what the technology can do, AI technology writ large. It has been a net positive. But I think the generative AI industry, which is what I guess Pence was referring to, I think it's hard to make a positive case for that. So we'll get back to that later on. It won't quite correct the grammar to your suicide note. But at least Western large language models are sycophantic to tell you that you're wonderful and that you're absolutely correct and they are wrong and so on. And that is a very dangerous design feature because unfortunately it has caused people to hurt themselves, harm themselves and so on. So there's a lot to be afraid of there. But I think overall the technology is very, very good. But I think you need to really suspend any belief one way or the other until you're given some hard evidence, and the hard evidence doesn't marry up with the narrative that industry is telling you.
Julia, excited, scared?
So my take on this is more excitement than scary. So from a consumer perspective, I know many capability used to like a sci-fi. Now everyone become an Iron Man, right? You have your super natural abilities. So that's very exciting. Everyone have potential to become Superwoman, Superman. I think that's a transformational, enhance humans' computing power because that's not what we build on. From business perspective also, it's exciting because now I see AI is more than just digitization, the organic AI, but more from my field is the physical AI. That means AI going to physical economy. So we see the robots, right? Robots everywhere. We see I just say the American Got Talent was 8 unitary robots dancing on stage. It was amazed because we used to robots stupid, ugly. They can dance no more like human, but they got better rhythm than human. But I would say that superpower, why I'm scary, because superpower, if you're not well managed, well governed, there is the downside, particularly cybersecurity attack. We know that FIBO released 3 days, then the US government put the stops, right? Because the FIBO has tremendous capability that not only can help the good side find the host, but if not well utilized by cyber attacker, there's tremendous threats there. So I would say, yeah, I mean, I think it's natural. Anything new come with downside. That's why I'm obviously AI need better regulation, but that's a different story. People who regulate this need to have the knowledge, be AI educated. I think right now in the government side, that's really scary. So that's my take. I would say AI is exciting.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Ni hao.
Ni hao.
So you're a pianist, you're an accomplished pianist, and you're a good singer. I haven't seen your dancing, but apparently Julia feels we could replace you with a robot for dancing.
We can replace
excited or worried by?
I think personally living in China, it's quite interesting to see there's very little of the ideological discussion about AI. So they essentially look at AI as a utility. It's like, well, okay, I need to use this. Everyone's using it. I need to use it. And from my perspective, I think 3 years ago, everybody said if you can't code, you're going to lose your job or you're going to be irrelevant. And 3 years later, here we are. That so it's moving very quickly. So I think I would see it as neither exciting nor that worrying, and the truth tends to be slightly less clear and kind of in the middle, whereby I think we'll be using AI to generate lots of useless things, and I think the cost of that will become prohibitive. So hopefully AI can be used to create the value that it can potentially create. But as for learning Chinese used to be a great thing to do. Now, sure, AI can do all that. Learning to play the piano or compose was a great thing to do, and so it depends on the industry you're in. And I get the sense of unease, and I noticed the students sitting in the front row were the ones who had their hands lowest when they talked about being excited about AI. And I think that's probably one of the saddest things, that people with experience or sitting kind of at a senior position feel very empowered by having this. I don't need to deal with assistants anymore. Don't need to hire any more graduates. I can just use this stuff. It makes me more efficient, and younger people are potentially feeling vulnerable that they're going to miss out on an opportunity. So I don't like the anxiety that comes with this new technology.
Hype. So we actually hope to have somebody from OpenAI on the panel, and they said they're in the process of preparing maybe for an IPO. We see SpaceX, we see, it's hard not to get caught up in you could make a lot of money on this, isn't it?
It's hard to believe anybody thinks they're going to make a lot of money on it. And I'm not surprised that OpenAI are not here. They don't tend to participate in public debate.
Perhaps that's perhaps that's
And I think because they can't defend themselves against the challenges that are placed, that are put in front of them. I think, obviously I teach large classes of undergraduates. You tend to find that undergraduates are not very comfortable with the vision of AI, because I think, at least my personal experience is that the younger people, it's not a question of experience or not experience, it's that they seek authenticity, and they see that this is not an authentic type of technology. There's huge hype. As I said, Sam Altman was sitting in front of the US Congress, and he was the first person to speak at that famous event, and the first thing he said was, AI poses an existential threat to humanity. And you would expect that if the CEO of OpenAI really believed that the first thing he would do is actually plug ChatGPT out. He didn't do that at all. These companies consistently feed you these contradictory, fantastic sort of stories, because they're trying to essentially find that point that people will grab onto what they're doing. They've said that by next year, there will be no white-collar jobs, if you're to believe these people. And does anybody actually believe that there will be white-collar jobs significantly lost in the next 12 months due to AI? Does anybody really believe that?
Yes.
Okay, so one person believes it. There's no economic evidence for that whatsoever. There are Nobel Prize-winning economists who are predicting, essentially nothing but growth in jobs. I think this is a very interesting conference from an AI point of view and from an automation point of view, because over the last 150 years, where technology has actually caused massive job displacement, has overwhelmingly been in agriculture. So if you look at what's happened in agriculture from the mid 1850s to now, huge job replacement because of massive automation. But automation that works, you can see it works, and I think it's very interesting you point to robotics. Robots are one of the things that we see them working, we can touch them, we know what they're doing. And I think the other really interesting thing about this conference from an AI point of view is that the AI business really needs to get into the farm to fork kind of traceability mindset. When you're faced with a recommendation or a decision from an AI system, you should be able to ask the same kind of questions that you can ask in a restaurant. Well, where has this plate of food come from? So where has this thing come from? And the thinking that's in the agriculture and food industry is one that needs to be adopted by the technology companies. And so I think that's a really great opportunity for you guys, because you do this at enormous scale. And you get it right every time. Well, maybe you don't, but the sense is that you do. And I think that's a really great positive lesson for the AI community to take from you. But, so I'd encourage you to, every opportunity to pin an AI person to the wall and say, well, how are you going to, you should be more like the food industry. And I think I just want to finish on, there's a fundamental difference between the US and China when it comes to AI. If you look at the US AI policy, you'll find that it's all about burning coal. You look at the Chinese AI policy, it's all about renewables. China is probably the world leader in renewables. And if you look at the amount of money that's been poured into getting to the same standard, let's say, in AI, China's streets ahead. China is advancing, on 10 cents on every dollar investment that's made in the United States. And so I think if I was, I could say a lot more about the economics of it, but China certainly not only is winning, probably already has won, and certainly will win into the future, because it's taken a long-term view of how to educate their children, how to educate their society, the idea that it's a utility rather than something that should be feared, a monster is going to take your job. I think it's a much more mature type of attitude. And if you interact with Chinese LLMs, they're not at all as sycophantic as Western ones. So I think there's an interesting sort of cultural difference in these two technologies. And the decisions that have been made in the US are far more societally dangerous than they are in China. So I think the US could do a...
Don't you like the LLM telling you that you're the smartest person on the planet? And that was a great question you just asked.
Not at
Aiden
all.
definitely likes
Not at all.
I've given up on humans. Humans
Not at all.
never.
Not at all.
Certainly my children never did.
Like,
Children never did.
Who wants to be told that they're great all the time? I certainly don't.
All right, okay. Ian, would you agree with me? Wouldn't it be nice to have some of these... What's your experience of China versus...
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's the constant thing about it, the decision cascade, right? That typically in the Asian culture is that if you start with something, then seniority means that that's typically the thing that happened. There was a very interesting, I don't know if anyone spotted this, but in early June, Starbucks Korea had a massive problem. So on the 18th of May, they launched a new campaign called the Tank campaign. So a super large cup, you could come in with a cup and get a free top-up. But the whole process was managed by AI, and no management got involved because the CEO was very pro-AI. The 18th of May, the day it was launched, was an anniversary of the tank massacre of their revolution. So Koreans came out on the street and started bashing their Starbucks cups, cancelling their subscriptions. And the CEO specifically came out and said, well, I just used AI to make these decisions, and the cascade meant that people in his organization who may have seen there was a culturally lack of sensitivity just missed it. So, I mean, I think there's very practical dangers in kind of outsourcing things to a sycophantic model. My comment about Chinese LLMs would be that I think we all spend too much time poking around trying to ask them the questions they're not allowed to answer. And they're very good at avoiding those questions. So, yeah, what I would say, the one thing to watch interestingly in China, where recently there was a case about the employment. So it's now illegal for Chinese employers to fire people specifically to be replaced by AI. So you have to find another excuse to fire people, which there's just a long list of those excuses, but you cannot use AI. So I think they're already trying to be productive. But in terms of, if you look at the big companies, I mean, private equity companies that used to have 200 analysts are down to 10. So, the idea that white-collar employment isn't going to be impacted by this, I think there's a lot of heads in sand, and maybe people are massaging numbers or blaming Trump and blaming other things, but AI is causing massive employment destruction in so many key sectors. I suppose food is one where we're still encouraging it in developing economies because there's still, percentage compared to the US where it's 2 or 3% involved in agriculture in terms of the working population. In Asia, you're still at 30-40%. So, there's still a huge space for automation. So, I think we have to look at AI in our industry and say we need AI to drive further optimization. But the big risk I see in agriculture is that we don't pass on those generational skills involved in agriculture. So, for example, younger farmers now don't want to really understand their crops and animals. They want algorithms to tell them what to do. Whereas the older generations would walk their fields or look at their animals. Now the next generation will want to look at a screen. And if that continues to cascade from generation to generation, it creates another type of risk. I do have a friend in China, is probably one of the only places that does this, who works in an institute where there is nothing digital allowed. So he mats on the back of the cigarette pack, and they're planning for a day when there would be no digital tools available. So they still need to be able to do architecture by hand and do everything by design. So I think, while it's good to use these tools, don't let your kind of IQ and capabilities fall at the rate these models are improving. So
cigarette packs must be pretty large then, I guess. Yeah. Julia, Kai-Fu Lee wrote a book and he's talking about the AI superpowers, and he's talking about it's going to be a war between China and the US. Ireland's in the middle, many of the people here in the middle. If Ireland, our country, has to choose, do they have to choose between US technology or AI coming from China? Is that how you'd perceive it?
I would say Aidan answered for wrong questions. So as we look at, the world getting extremely small, fast. So there is a talk about China and the US. I feel like this is a safe place to talk. But when I'm in the US, there are fierce competition with China. Lots of time is very sensitive, so I couldn't really say openly. But I would say there are two different races. There is a frontier model, which came out probably 3 years ago. There's a foundational model, right? So U.S. is still good at building the frontier model, like ChatGPT, Claude, Fable, but China is catching up. Like now when you download the LLM, you have Qianwen, which is pretty good, right? So it's a moving target. It's hard to say who lead, but in general, I think U.S. wins in the money and the scale. And China is really good at, they view AI as industrialization. So in China, they focus on deployment. So rather than just talk about innovation, right? So China is really good at vertical integration. So in China, you can see in the hotel, robots everywhere. They're also just stringent. They have the robots cup. Working with the human capital. So I think that China is really good at that. But another thing I think China is at adoption is better than, because naturally US has a regulation. I'm always half-half. Regulation is good for consumer, right? But China takes some risk. So I think China, I would say, so medical innovation, like disease detection, because China has a huge population, fewer hospitals. So they look at the most potential advantage is automatic diagnostic, right? So medical doctor, AI doctor can work with human doctor side by side. They have a massive database as well, which is not going to happen for Europe and US. So the data is very important. So I would say, I can see AI doctor will be adopted in China better, faster than US, because China willing to take more risk. So give and take, I think the competition is really strong. Really, for Irish, you look at what's industry, because each industry had different model. Even in agriculture, when you look at dairy, where I work from a crop, totally different field. Crop has a foundation model, right? That foundation model means everything else can build upon, right? But in dairy, in live animal, there's no foundation model. We're still in the early stage labeling everything. That's going to slow down everything. So I would say no one size fits all. Really depends on what you're looking at.
Barry, you get to advise the European Commission, you get to advise the Irish government, you get to advise, I'm sure, lots of people. Do you accept my, let's call it 0-1, my binary question? We either have to agree to be in the US system or a Chinese world.
It's a really interesting question. Like the geopolitics of AI are really, really important. And just if you look at what's happened over the last 2 weeks, obviously Anthropic were caught out in their fear narrative, claiming that Mythos was so dangerous that look what it could do. And so it's rare you'll ever find me agreeing with the Trump administration, but they only had one decision to make, which was what they did, which is to essentially export control, restrict Mythos and Fable, and prevent them from being used. There's a non-trivial possibility they might do that with OpenAI. And just ask yourself, do companies who are adopting these technologies, they really need to ask themselves, are we prepared to outsource our agency to run our own businesses to essentially two corporations that are currently privately owned? You don't want to be crazy, And if you are dealing with a company who is operating like that, who has essentially replaced their staff with AI, frankly, you should not be doing business with them. They're a huge risk to you. But this idea that there's a US versus China thing is very interesting. Just in the last couple of days, Microsoft has come out and said that they're considering using DeepSeek, the Chinese LLM, as the model for their Copilot CoreWork product. So all of you are probably using Microsoft products. The Copilot AI capability, which is currently using Anthropic, the US Microsoft might drop that. And why? Because it's just too expensive. Too much money has gone into OpenAI and Anthropic. And when I say how much, too much money, 60% of all investment dollars in the United States are in generative AI. It's nuts. There's no revenue to speak of. So Microsoft are seriously considering basically going to the east and taking DeepSeek, their own version of that. In all likelihood, they will do that. But that's the thinking behind that is really, really interesting. And so it could very well be that you have Microsoft, one of the most powerful tech companies in the world, seeking protection behind the Chinese government. Because would Trump dare export control the Chinese AI industry? Unlikely. But yet, there's lots of interesting things going on. I think in the future, I think the advantage is all for China because, as I say, they've invested massively in renewable energy. I mean, enormously in renewable energy. Almost every data center in the US is burning coal. And if it's not burning coal, it's burning gas. It's all burning fossil fuels. And the US strategy is completely silent on renewables. The administration doesn't even accept that there is a thing called climate change. And that will come back to bite them because they won't have the capacity to build the infrastructure that they need. And so the world is going to become a much fuzzier place. We don't have to decide. The companies will decide for us. And whether we like it or not, I think 100% of the multinational sector is bought into the Microsoft infrastructure. So I think it's not whether we're going to, move to Linux like they have done in France. I think it's really, what are these companies going to do? And the CEO of Microsoft, the CEO of Apple, the CEO of the people who build the tools that you're using on your desks, they don't have any allegiances to the US or China. They have allegiances to making sure that their business can run and that they can afford to run their business. And that's going to be all for China, frankly.
It's going to be the driver. Okay, switch to agri-food. Start with you, Ian. Practical wins, practical successes, AI in agri and food. What do you see?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you
this will be the last question, and I'd like to get questions from the audience, please.
Yeah, I mean, we've been involved in looking at livestock technology for over a decade. And I remember, if we look at the original systems, you had PC-based systems on the farm. Aidan was a CEO of a AI startup called Caintus, and I remember they had a farm in California with a $90,000 server on the farm to manage the data. So now the fact that we're able to process and generate that much data, I think it should make agriculture far more viable into the future, because now we're facing, in China, for example, El Nino is wiping out shrimp farms right across the south of China. So we're dealing with more extreme climate. Everybody knows all these things, but hopefully AI can help to make our businesses and our industry a little bit more resilient, because we'll be able to understand the risks and maybe plan a little bit further. I see kind of, if we think Peter Diamandis, and we think the demonetization of this technology is extremely exciting. So in your business, my advice would be you have to review everything at least once a year. So technology that might have seemed too expensive for you last year, you really need to be disciplined and look, because maybe something that was like, wow, that's $500,000, I can't afford it. It could be $50,000 a year later. So it creates huge opportunity, but also is an intellectual challenge, because you need to constantly review. So I think you have to maintain a curiosity and an open-mindedness to potential. But we're only scratching the surface, so good luck in applying, I think, a huge revolution.
Julia, wins for agri-food using AI. What are your thoughts?
I think that is already happening. So I was in the ICAR conference a few weeks ago. So what I'm amazed is, the data, the historical data that was never being used properly. Now with the AI model, advanced model, now people dig into a historical model, try to use the past, predict the future. That provides better data-driven insights for dairy farmers. I think the model today have tremendous potential to deliver that. Another benefit I see is, uncover the unknown. So I think a lot of information in the data, historically, we're not aware. With the AI, for example, we provide milk testing. We look at the milk cell, color, shapes, everything. Human eyes can tell no more than 5 features. With the AI model, look at 1,000 features, right? 1,000. So that 1,000 feature beyond traditional metrics, what we may know, right? Look at everything, look at the correlation, look at everything. And I think that's amazing. That's the ability will be uncovered by AI in ag, in dairy, specifically.
The complexity.
Just
shortly, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of obvious ones. So, like in the field of AI, one of the subfields of AI, optimization. One of the very, very first problems that optimization tackled was the sustainable diet problem. So this was about sort of the famous Stigler diet problem. AI has routinely been used for the last 20 years in packaging design, so food packaging design. It's been used in animal husbandry. It's been used in the logistics associated with agriculture. Food is, it's great to produce food. We got to deliver food. So who gets it? There's huge unfortunately, one of the big things that happens in food, as you all probably know, is that there's massive amounts of waste. And so there are all of these interesting markets for sharing food. And none of these are based on machine learning, in fact. They're all based on sort of optimization, recommender systems, these types of things. There's a very, very long history of success in food and AI. And if I could just, one interesting point is you're in the Boole basement. I'm not sure, Thea may have mentioned this, but this is named after George Boole, first professor of mathematics, the person who developed the idea that intelligence is thinking, is logical reasoning. His great-great-grandson is Geoffrey Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago for his deep learning work. And right in the center of them, Geoffrey Hinton's grandaunt and George Boole's grandniece is British-born, but is actually was a Chinese citizen. Hang Shun was very, very, as I'm sure my Chinese colleagues can tell you, was a very significant figure in the agriculture field in China under communism. And so it's interesting that the family of mechanized farming in China Logical reasoning in Cork and modern AI is all part of the same family. I think that's really, really fascinating.
Wasn't going to do this, but maybe just because of time and because we have so many topics, you're clearly very thoughtful. Well, you're all very thoughtful people, but I don't want much thinking. I'd like just a top-of-mind reaction. So I'd like to see a thumbs up, thumbs down. You're not allowed to look at the other person to decide how you're going to vote now, please. Okay. Thumbs up, thumbs down. AI will increase efficiency.
Down. Oh, efficiency.
Efficiency.
Up.
Yes.
No, did you wait to?
I think
no, I think she waited.
Yeah, waited too long.
Okay.
Efficiency.
Next one.
No,
AI will reduce the cost of labor.
Down.
Yes.
Will not reduce them.
2 down, 2 1.
Jeevan's power.
AI can be creative in writing graphics and videos.
Absolutely, yeah.
We haven't had okay. AI will replace good blue-collar workers, farm help.
No.
Farm help.
No.
No.
One says yes. AI will replace white-collar workers, managers, experts.
2 thumbs, no.
Do you want to put 2 thumbs up? Julia, what are we voting here?
1 half, 1 down,
Oh,
if I can.
Very Chinese.
I think the panel's going rogue on me here. I thought the rules were very clear. We've got...
No.
What's going on? AI will increase sustainability. Don't ask me what sustainability is, just vote,
okay.
Please. We had that debate earlier.
It can help, but it costs too much.
Data centers.
Voting sideways, I'm not sure, but Julia?
Yes.
Okay. Oh. AI returns are immediate.
Definitely down.
I would say yes.
AI returns will be seen in the next 2 years.
Oh, I'm sorry, what's the question?
The first one is immediate, this one is in 2 years. We'll see AI returns.
Down.
I would say yes.
Okay. AI returns will be seen within a decade.
So if you mean Gen AI, I say yeah. If it's Gen AI, I say no. If it's any other form of AI, I say
the way this game works is, I ask a question.
But you see, you can't ask vague questions.
I can't ask vague questions. That's the whole purpose of the game, is that...
So
Hayden,
depends.
Don't invite professors to this part of the game. AI will not reach the promise or hype of its promoters.
Well, that's definitely true.
That's definitely true. Yeah.
Julia, you can't nod. You need an up or down.
Yes.
Is that a thumbs up or thumbs down?
That it will not.
AI is a hoax perpetuated by promoters to attract investors.
I think he wrote that.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes.
Down, no hoax?
Yeah. There's always a bit...
Oh, no. Okay, I'm giving up on this. Questions from the audience, please. Questions from the audience.
There's a gentleman over there.
Is the audience still here? I thought we had agreed at the beginning that...
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Chit. I work as an agentic AI systems engineer in the food processing industry. So just one question for you, like what you mentioned about the agentic AIs and all this progress. What about the architectural development? What about the architectural development that needs to be for the core processing modules that needs to be integrated with the AI inference, like data center comes at last for the inference reasoning, rather than focusing on how to build up on the layers and develop that system based on the industry experts who have the knowledge already, rather than introducing the AI at the very beginning, which is causing a lot of chaos at this point.
I'm going to ask Barry just to rant for
I just need to know your perspective.
Yes, so I think there's too much work. So I'm referring to the generative AI world because I think that's what we're talking about today. I think not enough work has been done on the architecture. Not enough work has been done on domain-specific architectures. I think the companies are chasing this ideal of AGI, this general intelligence, and of course they're not focusing on the specifics that are required. And if the field of AI tells us anything, that the big returns that we've had in AI have been in very specific domains that have been informed by domain expertise.
Yes.
And so I don't think enough has been done there. And I think you don't have to look any further. If you think of the thing that's in your skull, that little machine that you have, it consumes about 25 watts of power. So we're all very, very intelligent people, and yet, the amount of energy that modern generative AI systems consume is equivalent of about 1.5 million people. So, the fact that these systems don't outperform you is because the architecture isn't optimized to beat somebody like you, So I think more domain-specific work needs to be done specific around architecture.
Okay, please get somebody else to ask a question. Yeah.
Hi, Dave Hassanzal. I'm a dean of a college of agriculture in California. I had a rude awakening when I got to this conference because the third computer I ever used is behind glass is a museum piece in the building we were in at first, an Apple Macintosh. But I'm wondering if you could give me advice on, we got a bunch of students here, where is it most important for us to incorporate AI into our classes?
Could I ask Julie or Ian just
What do you mean? You mean into the class education or for enterprise use?
He's a professor.
Yeah.
Oh, professor.
I'm a dean, so in our colleges of agriculture, where do our students need to learn AI most immediately?
Well, I think my son is a college, I think definitely the world moving forward, we're not going back pre-AI, right? So all the students need to be very familiar with all the AI tools, ChatGPT, find their own workflow, either for homework or work. That's become a skill. So in the future, I say this is very true. AI will not replace human like architecture work. That's humans' work, please. We're never going to be replaced by AI. But in the future, human going to tell AI what to do. You need to have the knowledge to tell what AI to do. So AI is really good execution, right? You tell them they do faster, better, some human, but you need to be in the driver's seat. In order to be in the driver's seat, you got to understand how AI works, right? So I would say lots of free course from Stanford. I would say if many colleges are falling behind, they still use old curriculum. That's dangerous, right? I would say update your curriculum, make AI forward.
Okay, two last questions, so just two left.
Yeah, real quick, Luis and Timms from GAPS Education. So I'm listening to you, and what I hear is AI in itself, it's not so much the problem, but how humans are using AI. So here we're buy any little gadget and it comes with a little booklet with instructions. Yet here we're buying this super powerful thing and has no instructions, right? So would you say that the way forward now is like press the pause button, and instead of worrying so much about what AI can or cannot do, replace or not replace, we should be worrying about how we are going to, as humans, learn and educate ourselves on what not to do or what to do with it?
Would you mind taking that, Ian? Because that's such an easy question.
We're
going to press the pause button on AI.
Yeah, well, I mean, Google put the world's kind of knowledge on the internet, and still most people are looking at cats on TikTok or whatever. So I think the problem predates AI, right? So I think the internet is, people are looking at AI as if it's something new. We've had internet and we've had access to the world's knowledge for so long. So in many ways, this AI thing is like, it's now the focus, I think, is being used to cover kind of this extreme incomfort. We're now, everything is available to us, yet we're sort of distracted by ridiculous things. So I think we can't just pin all this on AI. I think it's a far more, it's a technology addiction, which is probably distracting people. And who reads instruction manuals anymore? I don't know.
You use AI to read the instruction.
To read it, yeah.
Christian, last question.
Yeah, last question, thank you. Yeah, we're working right now more on the social side, but I'm talking about the data we need to train our AI, and what as industry, I think as agriculture and food industry, we need to do and can do in governance safeguarding, that we get the right data to learn it, that we benefit from really those computing powers.
I think Aidan should take that question, because that's
I'm a chair. Julia, please. And then,
I was in Barry, and please also come.
So I think this is very much related to the previous question. It's not just about how you use AI systems, it's how you build them too. So you have to build them properly. And I think the great asset that your industry has is its data. And I think what you need to think about carefully is this term AI it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you should approach any problem with thinking, well, how am I going to use AI to solve that problem. You should figure out, well, what is the problem I want to solve and what's the best way of doing it? And it happens to be good old-fashioned statistics, great. But I think what's really important is good old-fashioned proper sampling and data management. That's what's really key. And you can build a multitude of systems on that. But I think I would encourage people not to think of, how am I going to find a nail to hit with the AI hammer? I think that would be a mistake.
I'm going to have to conclude. Last comments, would you mind starting with me off, Ian? What should this audience remember from what you told us?
Well, I told you, I think everyone needs to move to Beijing. It seems like Barry says I'm in the right place for AI. I think keep an open mind and don't get overly obsessed with this topic. I think roll with it. 3 years ago, if you couldn't code, you were out. Now, if you don't know how to use Claude, you're out. Well, 3 years' time, it could be something we haven't even heard of. So don't overthink it.
Julia.
For me, it's a come to ag. I would say AAA, AI in ag with automation.
Oh, that's a very thought-through answer. Okay, Barry.
I think when you're thinking about AI, you need to be really, really selective in how you listen to the narratives and who is giving you the message. I think that's really, really important. And I think we're in a university. I want to come back to your question about what we should do in our classes. I think we need to be really, really careful not to wrong foot students and young people and their parents into turning away from certain disciplines because AI is going to do the job for you. There isn't a single job at this point that we know that AI is going to automate. There is no evidence of it.
Coding?
But coding is the only use case for large language models, and those who benefit from it are experienced coders themselves. But I think a great opportunity for universities is to point to students to using AI as a coding assistant to produce a demo or a website to exemplify an idea, but not to use it for thinking. And I think nobody in the room should basically hand over your thinking or your agency to any sort of system, because unless you're doing the writing, you're not doing the thinking.
That's the moment to stop. Thank you very much.